The previous basket is under review.
The opening night of the college basketball season was headlined by Florida versus Arizona, two teams we have talked about a lot on the Scout Team pod. Two teams that are among the best in the country, two of the most talented, two of the most physical teams, and two teams that play a very similar style, right? At its core, they both sort of subscribe to a lot of the like peak Gonzaga type principles with playing big and some high-low offense. And so it was going to be a fascinating showdown, without a doubt, between both coaches. And I was with Todd Golden before the game, just kind of catching up on the court. And he's like, look, it's great. If we win, everybody thinks we're awesome. If we're great, nobody thinks we suck. And based on the Basket Review Discord, there's a few people that seem to think the Gators suck. I certainly would not go that far. I don't think you would either, Fawcett. I thought it was an instructive game. It was a really fun game. The big story, obviously, was Koa Peat and just how dominant he was. But I think there's a lot to learn both, on the micro scale of, here's, how great Koa Peat is and how that can elevate Arizona into a championship contender, but also on kind of on the macro lens in terms of the way these two teams play and some stylistic things that could, potentially impact their seasons and other teams who are watching as well.
Yeah, this game is really a content machine from, of course, the breakout freshman game from someone who seemed to be just outside the cusp of all the freshmen that were like really talked about a ton. So for Pete to explode the way he did, for him to do it against a front court that many people were talking about as arguably the best front court in the country, for there to be that clash of the same styles where so much in college basketball is the meeting of two entirely different styles, where this was kind of strength on strength, pace on pace, front court versus front court. And for Arizona, the team that was the underdog, to go out and make the kind of scene they did. I felt like I knew 10 minutes into the game this was going to be one that we are going to have to talk about. We'll see what happens the next couple nights of the season where there's some other big matchups. But this was a great start to the college basketball season, and I'm glad that Golden had that mindset of like, well, like, we win, it's awesome. We lose, no one thinks we suck, except maybe some guys on the Discord, because these are the games we want people scheduling. And I think we saw why with how exciting it was on that opening night.
Right, and it will help Florida. Like Florida learned more from that game than they would have beating up somebody else. Let's be very clear about that. Now, they probably didn't love everything they learned, but they probably also thought a lot was really interesting. Probably the biggest thing that was, I think, probably surprising to the average fan was the matchup between Koa Peat and Alex Condon. Not to say that I think people had low expectations for Koa. We talked about him. We thought he could be an X factor in a lot of ways, right? His skill set being that of the sort of ideal Arizona four-man. But at the same time, your first college game as an 18-year-old is against first-team preseason All-American, ignoring how ridiculous that voting was. Like, one of the best players in the country, Alex Condon, national champion, starting power forward, Alex Condon. And that was a matchup that, like, I think Florida felt pretty good about coming in, and Koa Peat didn't just win it. He absolutely dominated it in every which way. Was the more physical player, was the smarter player, dealt with ball pressure better. I thought really playmaked and was able to distribute better, handle pressure. I mean, he was a complete player in this game. This was not just a show of brute force. I was really impressed with the full floor game that he showed. And he was the best player on the floor in a game with tons of high-level talent and tons of highly paid college basketball players.
Watching back, it's just as impressive as it was watching for the first time. And I think that you put it perfectly when you pointed out just the number of different ways he was able to score. There are some of these kind of short mid-range jump shots where he was able to get to his spot and make those shots. There were times where he used straight physicality, like you mentioned, against some very known physical guys with size on Florida. The way he was able to do it with speed against front court guys that are known for having good speed. And the one thing I like about so many of these clips, and look at that footwork right there, so much of what he's doing is out of the short roll. Like, how often do you talk about a stud freshman and be like, man, I think he can really make plays out of the short roll. And I think that that's something as we start to look at who are these freshmen going to be that can come in right away and be awesome. let's look at the stuff that they need to do to be impactful at the college level. Was Peat talked about as much of a like, oh, is he a guy who can make a bunch of step back threes and do a bunch of flashy stuff? Well, maybe not. But we'll see. He might still have some of that in his game. But this is someone who can catch in the short roll and either play make, go and get a bucket for himself with the jumper, go and get a bucket for himself with speed or power. You want him to rise up above a drop defender and dunk it. He can do that. And as you watch a couple of those spin moves out of the short roll, that ability to catch, get downhill immediately. You made this comparison to me last night, and I thought it was an awesome one with Tabellis, who did a lot of the same things. Now, I think that we could see maybe a little bit more ceiling even for Peat, of course. Tabellis having a great career in the EuroLeague right now, but you can see how Arizona has had kind of success with these guys in the past. And some of these things, catching in the short roll, making plays, getting to the rim, or hitting that short jump shot. Peat's doing a lot of that. And I think that is what I think just still gets so underrated when evaluating some of these high school players. Like what is the thing that a front court player needs to do to be successful at the college level? Okay, be really good in the screen and roll game as a screener, not as a ball handler, where again, we still see so many guys getting so much of the hype that are ball in hand creators that can make shots. And I don't want to make it sound like Koa Peat was some 3-star that was, completely over. Like, yes, he still had his flowers, but I think as you see what he was able to do, I think that, looking for guys like this in the future will be pretty important.
Yeah, I just wanted to pull it back really quick just because I think it's relevant to watch some of these and see all the different defenders he's doing this to, right? There was a clip with Handlogton. There was a clip, like here he's going into the chest of one of the best rim protectors in the country, Micah Handlogton. And now like, all right, Condit in space. He's skilled enough to go get a bucket on his own. He's not just playing with power, right? All right, now he's going to operate, just kind of hover, find those little pockets. All right, he doesn't have an advantage. All right, soft touch, right? And there was a Chinyelu bucket earlier, I think, in these clips. Like, we don't need to run him back. I just think the different ways that he was able to adapt to the game and take whatever coverage that Florida threw at him and take whatever personnel that Florida threw at him was just really, really impressive. His ability to draw fouls really was probably the most impactful part of his game because he forced Chinyelu off the floor. He forced Condon off the floor. And as Florida's trying to make a run and trying to score with Arizona, those are two of your best players that you need if you're going to win this game. And they didn't have them because they were in foul trouble. So, you can't say enough about the performance. We talked about, like, would the floor get clogged for Arizona this year? Because on paper, they didn't have a ton of shooting. And last night, it was amazing. They took 5 threes in the game. And the floor, like, yes. Was it? I mean, it was a throwback game without a doubt, but like the offense was not bogged down by the fact that they didn't shoot threes, that there was really only 1 to 2 threats to shoot a 3 on the floor at any given time. And I think a lot of that was because of Pete's ability to, again, understand how to play out of the short roll, understand how to, find the little pockets of space where he could operate and be effective, and keep the ball moving. He was not a ball stopper in this game. I was very impressed by that.
I think for Arizona, you look forward to and you think, okay, well, like what kind of guy is going to bother him when you look at all the different bodies that Florida put at him, and he was able to use either speed or skill or physicality to score at a high level or distribute at a high level. Like, so what matchup is going to scare you moving forward? There might be some more just like purely athletic guys. And that's one of the things as we talk about Florida's front court kind of generally, guys that are like mobile, quick, but not real like athletes that could come and contest a turnaround jump shot right at the summit at the last moment. That's why you saw that his touch was just kind of easier on these guys that aren't like huge leapers or anything like that. But that would be maybe the one kind of thing. But I think moving forward, that is something that Arizona fans have to think like, wow, this guy is going to put up a massive season. And I do think that 5 3-point attempts is really interesting. And I think that it's kind of started with the way that Florida was defending with the pick and roll. And of course, Florida is a team that wants to eliminate threes at all costs. And you saw that against an Arizona team that we went in before. We know we've talked about Jaden Bradley saying like, oh, Bradley's someone who is going to be willing to take as many mid-range jump shots as he wants. And you probably thought that might work in Florida's favor. Well, that wasn't the case. And Florida's drop system was just really poorly executed. They didn't get into the body of the ball handler. There was tons of separation created, which allowed them to take great angles around the ball screen and to come in with pace. The roller or the screen defender was letting the roller get behind them. They were over helping, taking away the tag. And as you see on a lot of these plays, and you're seeing some of these Peat highlights for the second time, you can see how Florida's like, okay, well, at least we weren't giving up threes off the dribble or catch and shoot threes opportunities, but like, well, they're putting their hand on the backboard and laying the ball in every time. And that's got to be something that's quite concerning for Florida, as they missed a bunch of these weak calls where they're supposed to send guys to the left hand. Screeners are in position for that, and they got rejected. There's all kinds of problems here for Florida. And as I went through, I think there's 15 clips in this category that was either a bucket or a foul from Florida because of their poor drop coverage. So I think that's a major concern. But what's also kind of funny about this as well is, on the other end, Arizona was playing the same way. We talked about how many similarities there are between how Tommy Lloyd and Todd Golden want to play. Arizona was also playing drop coverage, and they were giving up everything in drop coverage. And I do have to say it, Kevin, because what have we talked about now for a year and a half about some of the trends of the sport? Everything we talk about, generally speaking, on the defensive side is how the best teams are getting more and more aggressive. When we talk about teams that are really good in pick and roll coverage, most of them are getting more and more and more aggressive. These are two teams that played the most extreme drop possible, and both teams were getting whatever they wanted. So I don't want to look at the first night of the season between, again, two teams like a Florida, Arizona that are good, but I've kind of thought generally before the season, we were looking at trends and talked about how, like, we are probably going to see a lot more aggressive ball screen coverage as the drop revolution has kind of come and gone at the NBA level and Europe. I just wonder if this is the first thing we look at, and maybe the drop revolution has come and gone in college basketball, because those were both teams that could not get a stop with that coverage.
Yeah, and kind of quickly on the personnel side of that discussion, I think particularly for Florida, I think what got tricky is Jaden Bradley's such a big and physical guard. And yes, there are times where he leaves kind of points on the table, if you will, and takes these pull-ups. But they missed having an Elijah Martin or Will Richard to guard him, right? Boogie Fland and Xavier Lee and Urban Klavjar are not that guy. And obviously they don't have the personnel either to switch, right? Like the idea of switching, Xavier Lee onto Koa Peat is like a really bad idea. Like that's barbecue chicken. I will say there's a couple of times where they did end up switched, usually off the ball, and like Xavier was like trying to like basically just front or like take out of the play, whether it be Krivas or Awaka. And all I could think was like, this poor guy, like, has never seen anything like this in his career playing in the Ivy League. Like, it could not be more different in terms of just, what he's experiencing. So, I think, again, part of it's just like, how Florida's built. And I think that will cause some weaknesses defensively, but I also think, most teams don't have the type of personnel to exploit it the way that Arizona did. And I also expect Florida to continue to adjust and adapt. But Arizona in a lot of ways had the personnel to shred the way that Florida wants to play. And in some ways that makes it a little encouraging that Florida was in this game, probably would win this game if they made more shots. Like, I know it's the boring explanation always. You say, if they had made a couple more threes, the Gators would have won. But they took a lot of wide open shots that they just did not make. That, like, at some point, like, if Florida's going to be a pretty good basketball team this year, Boogie Fland and Xavier Lee have to make wide open threes. Like that's part of the formula.
And in a game that, again, felt like it had so much narratively, it almost had that ultimate breakdown, ultimate collapse from Arizona, where Boogie Fland forces a turnover once they get a bucket, then gets another turnover when Arizona had a player fall and it went up right into Boogie's hands, and he had that wide open corner three and he missed it, which was kind of ultimately was Florida's last real chance at coming back in the game. So, you could certainly, if you're Florida, you look back at a lot of those moments and you say, okay, like there's chances to steal a game. And Kevin, you were there, but it sounded on TV at least like it was, maybe 60-70% Arizona fans. So that atmosphere maybe had somewhat of a role as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, Florida was not perfect by any stretch. You point out the defensive stuff. I think the guards didn't play as well as they needed to play. They were right there. Arizona wasn't perfect either. Like, they've got stuff to fix. So that, their defense broke down at points, especially early. I think that the turnovers late in the game allowed Florida to kind of hang in. Was impressed with Ivan Karchenkov. I don't know if you want to run these clips or we should probably wrap it up, but I thought he just blended in like he was ready for the moment. One of the younger guys on the floor and made big plays, rebounded, low usage, made like the one crazy step back banker that was kind of crazy. But that was like almost like the least important play to me of his night. Like he was just eminently playable, and that's the type of guy you love to sign especially as you're building out your rotation.
Yeah, playability just in terms of it also just seemed like every rebound found him on the offensive and defensive side. He had a couple of big defense rebounds where he battled with some of Florida's bigger front court players, came down with it. Offensively, there were times where he just it seemed like the ball bounced to him with a lot of luck, but it also, there's just some guys have a little bit of that nose for the ball. And I thought he didn't do anything that like other than that one has to throw up the prayer three. Everything he did seemed just kind of like well within what he has shown in his resume in Europe, playing at a high level. And these are the type of guys that, I know I've really planted my flag on, like these guys that played in really good leagues in Europe are going to be awesome in college basketball. Karchenkov not at the like top of the list of guys are like, these are going to be absolute studs. But I think that is kind of going to be the floor of what these guys bring. Like you said, just playability. Like this guy's played in the Euro League. Like he's put in the work defensively as a complimentary player at the Euro League. Yeah, Koa Peat's cooking. Yeah, he can do whatever it takes to get that guy set up. I thought he did really well in some switch situations, guarding guys bigger than him. Thought he did really well on the perimeter sometimes. I know Hauk really got loose for a high point total, but I think a lot of that was offensive rebounds, some plays in transition. Like it wasn't, I know Karchenkov was guarding him a lot, and you might be like, well, Hauk had a massive game. Don't think a lot of that was on Karchenkov's head. So was really impressed with him. And I really liked a lot of the European guys that we are, I should only speak for myself, that I've been hyping in the offseason. Thought it was a good start for them. So that is something we will obviously be monitoring throughout this season.
I was going to say, I think a video is almost assuredly coming soon on all that and all these freshmen. But we figured we'd jump on right after the start of the season and just give you an early breakdown of the biggest game of the week in opening week in college basketball. And a fascinating stylistic clash. So we will see you all soon with more Scout Teams. Subscribe to Basket Under Review and the Burner Ball Discord. So much fun on there, whether you're a fan of the podcast, the written work, some of the gambling talk on the Discord that always gets lively. Some of the takes during games. It's a fun place to be on a night watching hoops. So I hope you subscribe. Hope you enjoy the show, and we'll see you next week.